Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the ValuesJam guest session series. And Tessa, fantastic to have you here. And to start with, please introduce yourself and tell people about the great work that you do.
Hi, great work. That's a good introduction. Yeah, I'm Tesse Akpeki, and at the moment, I call myself a global citizen because I'm a citizen of the world. I'm a mentor, I'm a coach, I'm a chartered secretary, a fellow of the Governance Institute, Chartered Governance Institute. I'm also a fellow of the Association for Coaching, and I totally love people. So I'm a human-centered leader who supports other leaders and just love humanity.
Okay, and you also do some charitable work, don't you?
Absolutely. I am known for doing governance work. And for working with C-suite, so executive directors, chief executive, chair people, and governing boards, particularly around their roles or responsibilities, and more about board dynamics, how to get on well. But if you ask me what I'm most proud of, and this actually happened 3 years ago now, is I founded a virtual network called the Wellbeing and Resilience Leadership Initiative. And this is something that has always been in my heart to support leaders, whether in a personal or professional capacity, through conversations or through pointing them to resources to help them in their journeys. And I do that as it's not a registered charity, it's a virtual group. And I do that from the bottom of my heart, no charge. And actually, Alan, it's given me the greatest happiness that I can be of assistance in the world. I used to be a charities trustee, and I used to chair committees, usually the recruitment and nominations committees. I used to do that. I used to be a non-executive director in the NHS, and I used to be in a number of advisory groups which were supported by government. So a number of quangos, I was involved in those things. Used to be the being the operative word, because now what I do, I'm involved in a lot of advisory work, and I am a special advisor to the Bishop of London and a consultant to the Bishop of Wilson. So I'm very involved in faith communities, supporting clergy and supporting people who want to serve God. And so all these things come together from my heart, and it's just the desire of my heart to be of service.
That's great. And what you've just described, it just demonstrates how money can be a distraction. And it sounds like you found your way towards what is really meaningful for you. And I use a phrase, how long have I been using this for now? Probably about 6 or 7 years, which is to pay more disrespect to money. Because I think when you make decisions based on money, then sometimes they're not particularly good choices. Even though it's maybe challenging to do that sometimes, you find yourself in so much of a better place.
Alan, I could give you a virtual hug right now, and I tell you why. Because what I haven't mentioned is that your work on values actually helped me on my journey. I came across your work, and I started reading and listening to things we're doing, and actually that connection with values really struck me. And I just love what you were doing. And then when you invited me to be part of a panel a couple of years ago, I had to do some more research. Not had to because it was impulsive and necessary. It was have to because I realized that I needed to dig more into my soul, and I needed to dig more into my values. So, I have to say a big thank you. And then to cream it off, that Christmas, you sent me one of your calendars, and and the calendar really spoke to me, and every month I was so, it was not only was it aesthetically beautiful, I have to say, and quite elegant, it had sayings on it.
Yeah.
Some of them were fun sayings from songs and Beatles songs and things like that, and others were just things I said, oh, this is really wonderful. But what it made me realize was that the values in that way, not just as a tick box but as a lived avenue to doing things, it turned my life in a different direction. And so partly where I am now, which is about finding,
Tess,
I'm
you just
I'm
want
I'm still searching for meaning. I'm still searching for purpose, and I think that search for meaning will continue. You know, Viktor Frankl's book is one of my go-to places. I'm still in that journey, but actually your work, Alan, about values made me realize that for me that was something I could connect with. But interestingly, what I found, Alan, do you know what that is? I used to worry a lot about where's the next paycheck coming in? Where's the next client job coming in? Where's this happening? And I worried a lot about that. And those are things to worry about. But where I am now is I'm not so much worrying about those things because I feel that when I follow my heart, other things will happen. And that's a place where I am. I'm beginning to embrace contentment and
to,
knowing that as long as I have enough for today, tomorrow will take care of itself. And guess what? It is. And what is surprising me is where that help or that support is coming from. It's coming from places that are close to my heart, but from people and groups I least expect. And in many, many ways, I am beginning to connect with joy in a way that I never used to. I'm still in that journey, Alan. And I guess it's going to be continuous. But yes, thank you for your values, Jam. I love it.
thank you, Tessie. So let's choose a values
Okay.
card. So
Okay.
how many piles would you like me to put in front of me?
Well, Alan, I love three, the number three,
Okay, so
because
let's
it's a
do that.
beginning, a middle, and an end. So I'd love you to speak to three cards, Alan, if you may.
Okay, and would you like the left, right, or middle pile?
Oh, wow. I'm looking at you and I see a glint in your eyes. I'm going for right.
So now I'm going to have to count these cards now. So 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 21 cards. So a number between 1 and 21.
Wow, I love this number. So I'm going to go for 14.
14.
Yeah.
Look what you've done.
See, I told you, follow your heart. I love that.
So, well,
Totally.
before we start this, actually, you talk about follow your heart, and I talk about follow your values. Something I realized it's probably since we last spoke. I was at a graduation ceremony doing a talk, and I was wanting to talk about values, but as I was talking, it occurred to me that something my grandmother used to say, and she used to say, Alan, you need to follow your nose, which is really quite funny. But actually, now when I think about it, I wish I could ask her the question whether she thought there was a connection between her telling me to follow my nose and the work that I've ended up doing of
Mm,
encouraging people to follow their values.
mm,
Anyway, first question about friendship, Tessie.
yeah.
What does friendship mean? And secondly, what does it look, feel, and sound like?
Wow, that is so deep. What does friendship mean? Wow. I find it, I'm African heritage, and I find it so hard to answer questions with just succinct meanings. But I think that for me, friendship is never being alone. Someone who comes and sits alongside you, walks alongside you, listens and dries your tears, and someone who you can celebrate with and who can celebrate with you. So for me, friendship is about companionship, walking, talking, being, embracing, and loving. That's friendship to me, Alan.
Okay, well, you said you couldn't do concise. That was concise. Just
Yeah.
tying back to you a couple of things there, then I think I agree with all of those things that you've just said. It's kind of these all facets of life. Your friend can be with you in the good times and also with you in the not so good times. So it's nothing to do with highlights. It's just consistently there. Um, and then friendship is also unconditional and without judgment. So mainly, although obviously we're human beings, so maybe it does play a part sometimes. Um, and also, there's something I've had a values jam about friendship recently, and so it might be because of that this is in my head. Friendship seems to overcome the restrictions of time and place. So I don't know if you've a friend that you don't see very often, but it feels, my experience anyway, is that when you're together, it's like the time disappeared that you weren't together. So you got any thoughts on that?
Alan, you've mirrored something very deep in my heart because most of my friends aren't in the UK. They're
Okay.
actually spread all over the world. And I don't get to see them that often. Thankfully, Zoom is here and Teams and everything, so I get to connect with them. But when I do see them in person, it's just as if we've never been away from each other
Yeah.
and everything disappears. So what you said is very close to my heart. But also sometimes my friends, they come into my mind and I'm thinking about them deeply, and maybe I'll call them in a week or 2 weeks later, and I said I was thinking about you at this time, and they said, oh, at that time this was happening. And it's really interesting how you can be connected with somebody and you're not seeing them but you're feeling stuff. And so I'm really one of these people that thinks that friendship is not longitudinal. It actually merges into different things. But what I love about what you said, I love all what you said, but what I love about was when you said through good times and bad times, and people are there, and also, this unconditional friendship, and that's hard, and us being human beings, that strikes me because what I'm learning a lot about, I'm a perpetual life student, is the power of forgiveness. That in order to be in a good, healthy friendship, we need to forgive others and we need to forgive ourselves because we're not always going to get it right. And when I'm in a friendship and I feel I'm walking in eggshells because I'm so afraid of getting it wrong, then the friendship stops being healthy for me,
Yeah.
because I'm so scared of losing it. But if I'm in a friendship where I feel, you know what, lead with a good intention, lead with my heart, lead with my values. And yeah, I'm going to mess up sometimes, but I feel confident that the other person is going to forgive me. But also, I feel confident that I'm going to forgive myself for getting it wrong. That's a friendship that is for life.
Yeah. And that's something new that you've added in there, isn't it? This thing around you're feeling comfortable to be yourself,
Mm,
however that is,
mm,
in a proper friendship. That's what you're able to do.
mm.
Um, yeah. Okay. And what about the metaphor part of the question? So when I say the word friendship, what images come to mind? What sounds come to mind? And what feelings come to mind?
Wow. Wow. Okay, I'm going to start with sound.
Okay.
The thing that came into my mind, as you said, what sound? It's actually a bell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like when you ring a bell and it's kind of
Yeah.
clinky. When I hear friendship, I think the bell sound, I'm feeling joyful. So the sound of joy, the bell is ringing, joy is here, joy is here. And so that's the bell. And then you talk about feel what I feel like. And I really love cashmere.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's a love. I can't wear wool because it itches me for some reason, but cashmere doesn't.
Right.
And when I feel cashmere, I stroke it. It's warm and it's soft. That's what I feel about, friendship. When the word friendship, like cashmere, you stroke it and it's very soothing,
Okay.
actually soothing. And then when you're talking about what I see, what do I see when I think about friendship? I actually see green as a color. And I love green for different reasons because green reminds me of nature. And then when I'm out in nature and I see the green grass and I see, things that are green around me, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is calming. And you can see I'm wearing kind of a version of green today. And I didn't actually realize what was happening. But actually, when I see green, it's such a healing, restorative, repairing, re-energizing color. and so I see the color green, and immediately, friendship comes to me.
Okay. So just a bit of a digression, but you talking about green, I also like green. And so sometimes if I'm answering an email, to make it easy for the other person, I just put notes against what they sent to me. And a lot of people seem to put those notes in red if they use the same approach. I always use green because I think of green as being a far more positive color.
Mm.
So the image that comes to mind for me when I think of friendship is mirroring of body language. So I can see two people who might be silent together, just gazing into space, or they might be laughing together, or they might be looking deeply into each other's eyes. So that kind of connection and being on the same wavelength is the image that comes to me for friendship. The sound is actually laughter and a kind of hubbub of noise, so a conversation-y type noise. And then feelings, it's got to be a hug. So when I see people, and I think this is only something again that I've chosen to do probably just before COVID, something like that. With guys, I never used to hug, but now I do with my friends because it just feels closer than a handshake or whatever it is. And I'm confident enough now to not feel embarrassed about doing that, just to go ahead. And actually, it's been quite enlightening how receptive people are, even though you can see a slight shock on their face that you're moving in
Mm.
for a hug.
Mm.
So yeah, that's the feeling that comes to mind for me. So we've kind of started to explore mostly, well, virtually everything that we've talked about is very positive. So let's throw ourselves off balance and go the other side for a little while. And let me ask you, where have you noticed a lack of friendship?
Wow, that is mega. So I'm going to say the first thing that comes to my mind,
Yeah.
and lack of friendship has come in from culture wars. And how has that manifested itself in situations where I felt I had a friend, and then things like Brexit came along and stuff, and then I didn't have a friend. It split us. So where I've seen a lack of, and it shook my security as well. And where I've seen a lack of friendship is where, in the last few years, where my opinion and what I choose to believe and what others choose to believe has actually split us. And so a friendship has been destroyed. And there has been a deeper question that I've asked myself was, were we ever friends? Maybe, maybe not. But that's where I've seen a lack of friendship, culture wars, and an inability to embrace the difference of opinion or the difference of perspective, and respecting that that's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but um, that's me, and I don't have to agree with you because that's you. And it's that what's coming into my mind is the ability to embrace nuances and ambiguity, without the certainty of we share the same opinions. And I've seen that's been what's been alive for me, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and isn't it strange how things like that can get in the way of friendship? And even actually, I know people that are blood relatives that have been
Mm,
split by
mm,
things like
yeah.
this. And you hear a lot of it in America, for instance.
Mm.
And so I'm just thinking of an example of where I have noticed a lack of friendship. Um, and I think it would be where I used to live, which was in the home counties in Hertfordshire, in a smallish village. And there weren't really very many deep friendships. There was a lot of knowing each other, maybe being in the pub or at the sports and social or whatever it is. But actually, the relationships were not particularly deep. Um, and I suppose that might be a function of family, that people focus on their families, and that quite rightly should be a focus for people. Um, but I remember reading a report about how friendships were possibly the most valuable relationships that we have in our lives. And it was making a case for making space for your friendships to blossom rather than, kind of take them for granted and just give them air when you've got time type of thing. Um, so that lack of friendship that you've reminded me of by your answer has kind of taken me to this way in which we sometimes, yeah, I think take for granted is the right term. Do you invest time in making sure that you're connected with your friends on a regular basis?
I've got better at it, Alan. I'm going to confess, I haven't always invested as much quality time in my friendships as I do now, and life happens. And I've had to forgive myself for the times when I could have been more present, where I could have noticed a bit more, where I could have um, invested more time in friendships. Now, I'm not, the feedback I've got from people that I've not been bad. So, but from where my heart is, which is in about friendship, I could have done better. So these days, I do more in terms of this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to free up time for anything. I'm going to free up time for anything and see what comes. And I just do that. So before before we had this call, I was telling you that I have, I'm a recovering workaholic and I love working and stuff like that. So in working and doing all those things, I wasn't making as much time for my friendships. I had them, but it was hard because I was working all the time. And these days I work, but I work less so that I can have time for my friends more. Alan, can I surprise you with something that I found about it?
Sure.
I'm happier. Honestly, I have less money. Not that I was rich, but I had more money. I have less money now because I'm not working as much. I'm not earning as much. And yet I'm happier because I am enjoying my friends. And from what I'm seeing, my friends are enjoying me. So it's not a one-sided thing. And what I didn't realize was that I was climbing up the wrong ladder of what was important. The right ladder was friendship.
Yeah.
And yes, I was on it, but I was at on a much lower rung on that ladder. And now as I'm going higher up the ladder of friendship, my life is more joyful.
Yeah.
And I hope that I'm being able to, for my friends to see more of me as a friend than they did previously.
Yeah. And it's this thing. Let's make up a choice. It's either, I'm going to be very sexist now. Okay, so it's a choice of either um, a new handbag or spending a day with a friend. And it's, you don't know what the day with a friend is going to bring, and so that's part of the challenge of making that choice. You might have a few photographs and some memories, but you won't have very much tangible to be able to hold or see. But you will have those strong memories of that day. And actually, you just let me share a story with you. Actually, so the backstory to this is that I worked with this guy in hotels, and he then went to work in Russia, and then he went on to the Far East, and we lost contact. And after about maybe 15 years, we reconnected on LinkedIn. And I just said he was then living in the south of France. And so I said to him, I'm going to come and see you in the summer. because, why not visit a nice part of the world and catch up with him? Now, by chance, we went to, and actually you shared earlier that you have strong faith. We went to a local abbey, so an abbey. I can't remember the name of it, but while we were there was this old guy just wandering around, and he started singing Gregorian chant music. And so I said to my friend Francois, Francois, you got to find out what's going on here, what's happening. So he went and asked him, and then I watched the two of them. My French is really rubbish, so I didn't know what was going on. But this guy stood in the middle of one part of the abbey and sang a note. And then he went to the side and he put his back against the wall, and the wall above him came curved to a point at the top. And he sang a note and then stopped. And the note just carried on and on. And what he explained to Francois was that this material that they had used to construct the abbey and the architectural design was exactly for that, to enhance the sound in the abbey. Then on the way out, we noticed some CDs for sale, and it was this guy and his son. They were professional singers. So Francois got the CD and got the guy to sign it. And then on the way back to Francois's place, we were just talking about how we had not planned that experience, right? We had no idea that that was going to happen. All we did was two people who were friends decided that they would do something together, not knowing what the outcome would be. And as a result of that, I've been able to tell you one of my favorite stories ever. And it goes back a little bit to, earlier when you were talking about how you don't believe friendship is longitudinal, and you think there's more to it there. And you talked about how we sometimes say, oh, you were thinking of me? Well, this was happening. I don't really believe in that sort of stuff, that it's a little bit too woo-woo for me, but it happens too much for there to be nothing in it. And so the way I deal with it is that I don't need to know. I'm just happy to live with it when it happens, because it's beautiful when it does.
Alan, I'm laughing because this is, you see, what you've done in my mind is bridging. When I was saying that some people sometimes in French they reject people because an opinion, in my mind, what you've done is I don't really believe that in that, but this is how I'm prepared to be. And that if there was more of that bridging going on, then we'd have more sustainable friendships.
Yeah,
Because it's a kind of not making the other person wrong
yeah,
and not making you right. It's just being.
yeah,
And a lot of friendship is not just about doing, it's also about being, how you are in the moment, how your lens is. I mean, I have not kind of had a lot of encounters with you, Alan, and yet my intuition tells me that I'm safe with you. And that goes to what you're presencing in when you are connecting, and it's absolutely beautiful. And one can't overthink it. You can't kind of fantasize about it. It just is. Just
yeah,
like in the Abbey, it just was. But
yeah,
you know what struck me more about that story you were telling me was you and your friend followed your instinct, and your instinct turned out to be even more than anything else. You actually met the creator of something else. And that's what I find when we follow our nose, when we actually follow our hearts, when we follow our values, we get into spaces and places where we would not otherwise have been, with the overthinking, the over planning, the over rationalizing, we get into a really special place. So you tell me handbag, or time that I don't know. And I'm going to be honest with you, pre the thinking that I'm telling you about. I mean, I was a woman who used to be in Harrods buying bags and stuff like that. I used to, and so a good day out with me was a Harrods day and have a nickel day, etc. So that was big for me, and I would have chosen that pre where I am now.
yeah.
And now you say that I would go for the friend any day, any day.
I had no idea that you were that sort of a person and that
Oh
chap.
yeah.
But
Oh yeah. Yeah.
wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Now, um, I'm thinking that in Values Jam, there's a chance for you to make up your own question, right? So let me invite you to ask your own question about friendship, starting with who, what, where, when, why, or how. And we can answer it together. Either you can answer your own question first, or else I can.
Yeah, the question that comes into my mind about friendship is emotions. That's the
Okay.
thing. So, what kind of emotions are at play for a healthy friendship?
Okay. And do you have your answer first, or do you want me to have a go?
I would like you to have a go at that.
Okay. So, what emotions in friendship? I think my answer is the whole spectrum because of what you were saying earlier about when it's a proper deep friendship, you can be yourself. And so I'm just thinking about a scenario where something not so good has happened to you and you're meeting a friend. For your good friends, you tell them what happened. For your acquaintances, you might try and put on a brave face and be, what you're supposed to be in their eyes. So there's a bit about the full spectrum, but then there is also a bit about being deeply respectful for your friend so that you don't overpower them with whatever you might be carrying. Um, and I think sometimes people use being authentic as an excuse for actually being quite rude and impolite and disrespectful. Um, so that I'm just listening to my own answer, and it might not sound like a very clear answer actually, because on the one hand I'm saying all of your emotions, but then on the other hand, just have respect for your friend at the same time.
Wow. To me, it's very meaningful. It's very meaningful because it speaks to me about being sensitive as well as being vulnerable and authentic. And those things sometimes can be in conflict with each other. So I'm going to ask you a question, Alan, because and that this comes to the emotion because earlier on in our conversation, you said we were talking about hugs, and you were telling me about embarrassment that you used to feel embarrassed, particularly hugging your male friends. And the question that sprung into my mind was what that embarrassment was, because embarrassment is an emotion, isn't it? So what was that emotion at that time? What was occurring for you right there?
Um, I think it's probably and I don't know why I've got this feeling, but when I was younger, it was like if you're a guy and you're strong and you're on your own, and guys don't hug. Um,
Mm,
so I guess that's where it came from.
mm,
And it's before we came on the call, we were talking about that video recording on record when you're a child. I have no idea whether it's anything to do with that. Actually, my dad left us when I was around about 13. Um, so maybe the absence of a father figure might have something to do with it. I don't know.
mm.
Um, but it now it is it doesn't even cross my mind. It's just such a good feeling.
Yeah, I love it. I really love what you're saying in the sense that there could be all sorts of reasons, but the important things that you journey towards. I'm doing this hugging piece, and your friends from all seem to be liking it as well. So
That's
you've
right.
liberated them. I actually asked you about the emotions piece because at the moment I'm reading a book called It's Not Always Depression,
Yeah.
and it's written by a psychotherapist. And I love this book because it talks about the different ranges of emotions, the different ranges of emotions, and it mentions guilt and it mentions shame. and it mentions blame, and it mentions so many other things, other kind of emotions. And they talk about in inhibitory emotions, and it talks also about emotions that are core emotions. Now, why do I love it so much? Because I love reading. So one of my favorite go-to books is called Atlas of the Heart, and it's written by Brené Brown. And I'm so happy that I read this book by Hillary, which is It's Not Always Depression, because what it speaks to me, and this comes into friendships, is that all emotions are valid. There is no emotion, like people say, negative emotion and positive emotions. No, emotions just are. Just as the same way that we take oxygen
Yeah,
and we need oxygen to breathe, so we cannot not have emotions, and I grew up with a lot of boys around me. Mom had 6 boys, and boys were told to be strong and to be this and to be that. And being strong meant not expressing emotions,
yeah,
whatever. And now I know that that was not necessarily good advice, because men, women, as long as you're human, you have emotions. And so you saying, you move from that to hug. My heart, I'm going to tell you, warmed. I just warmed because I'm just like, oh, one of Alan's hugs, gifting other people with their friendship. Oh, good, the friendship just got richer, you know. So yeah,
So
I love the
Tessie,
emotions.
what we've done, I think there is we've violently agreed that friendship embraces, I think is a good word, the whole spectrum of emotion. And I think that's a really great way for us to start to draw this values jam to a close now, because the final question is a short answer. And it's, what are you encouraged to do differently about friendship as a result of our conversation?
Wow, that is beautiful. What am I encouraged to do differently as a result of our conversation? Interestingly, the first word that comes into my mind is sensitivity.
Okay.
And that is in sharing and in caring, being sensitive to where the other person is or is not. And in many ways, validating and appreciating that person for where that person is. No judgment, no judgment. That's where that person is. And that means not being overly like psychotherapical about it and
Yeah.
clinical about it. That's not, but it's just that simple question. How are you
Yeah. And when, if I can just ask you to consider, when will you have the first opportunity to put that into practice?
today? Just after this call, I have somebody who's not necessarily a friend in the way that we're talking about, but somebody who I came in touch with through the criminal justice system, and we worked through a very tricky situation with my brother, and actually it worked towards um bonding us. This person's a police officer, actually, and we actually repaired that relationship and built that relationship. And actually now I see, because friendships come in different levels, now I see him as a friend of sorts, and I have the opportunity immediately after this call to put that into practice.
All right, and mine is a simple one. So one of my best friends, we're going to see a football match this month. So Wales are playing in the Euro qualifying group, and I'm going to suggest to him that we meet before the game to have something to eat and a chat rather than just go straight to the game. So that's what this call has prompted me to do differently, which is great, and thank you for that. So you're a qualified values jammer, Tessie, now.
I love it. I just feeling the warm feel around my heart. And it's just, before it was just a little like spark. Now it's a real warm thing. So I'm operating from this warm jam, kind of values jam thing. And I feel awesome right now.
That's brilliant. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Thank you. It's been great being with you, Alan. I love it. Such fun. Thank you.
Bye.